Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we tackle a landscaping project at a flower bed which I call my bay window flower bed. So let's go. We're on the west side of my house. This is my front walkway, and pretty much we've worked on projects here. We've landscaped it, we've weeded, we've done a lot of work in both of these areas, even where my pond is over here. But behind me, I still need to tackle it. We have not tackled this project. I feel like it's something that needs to be done because this is my front of my house here. I want it to look nice. I've been in this house for almost 20 years, and this bed has changed a lot over those 20 years. But I'm at a point now where I really want to tackle this and have it look good for a long time. There are a lot of things that I want to remove. There are a lot of things that I want to add, that I want to divide. And I'm going to take you step by step on this project and what I'm planning to do. One thing I want to point out is with this boxwood, it does not look very good. This is the first year actually I've ever trimmed these boxwoods. There's one here and there's one here. This one I think still looks very good. This one, not so much. I'm going to leave it for this year, but there is a very good chance that I am going to remove it in the fall or early spring. I think it still will look okay to have just one boxwood in this bed. This boxwood is at the corner of the house. I think it's a nice focal point for the corner. So I don't think we'd be missing anything if we remove that boxwood. But for this year, we're going to work around it, and we're going to add some color in the center here. So let me bring you in closer to show you some of the things I'm thinking of doing in this bed. I really love how the Stella d'Oro daylily are lining this area. Over here, I have a bunch of Leopard's Bane, which are super pretty, and they bloomed in the springtime. I'm going to be dividing them, and I'd like to move some more on this side over here. There are a bunch of weeds that need to get pulled out. I do know that I have some lobelia right there. Very pretty, blooms in the late summer. I'll be digging that out. Here we have a few Spirea. They're very pretty. I got them from my mother-in-law's. They're a pink color. They just do not do well. I'm not sure why. So at a minimum, I'm going to be digging them up and I'm going to be moving them. I have a bird bath here, and I will be moving that at some point during this project. Around this bird bath in this area here, I have a spring blooming bulb, and I'm going to be removing those. So let's go ahead and start cleaning up this bed, moving a few plants around. And once we've done that, we can then start planting it with some beautiful perennials and annuals that I have in my yard. Some of the general maintenance that I'm doing to this flower bed is just deadheading my Stella d'Oro daylilies. Here's a daylily that's gone by. There's nothing else on this stem, so I'm going to follow it all the way down and just cut it back. There are stems in here that don't have any daylilies on them, no buds on them. I'm following them down, cutting them back. In this case, I'm just going to snip off these blossoms that have gone by. We have some daylilies that have started to go to seed. We don't want that. We don't want the plant to put its energy into producing seeds. So we're going to remove the seed pods. And I'm basically going to be doing this to all the daylilies in this bed. Just a regular cleanup. I think I've mentioned this before, but I think it's okay to not have a full plan. Like right now, I have a small plan, and it starts with weeding and digging out perennial seedlings like this one. And then eventually, after I've kind of cleaned up this space, I will then survey it and think about what plants I do have. Maybe walk around, go to my plant nursery, and have a general plan of what I'm thinking. And I might change it as the day goes on. I might change it next spring. But for right now, I have a general plan of what I'm thinking. I'll share that plan with you. And my goal for this year is to clean this space up, and I want it to look beautiful. And then next year, we'll see how the plants are doing. We'll assess. If something's not looking good, we'll remove it. If there's something else that's really pretty in the garden, we'll add some of it here. But it's basically trial and error and getting to a point where eventually the space looks good. Kind of like with these daylilies. I tried them out. I only had them in the front of the border a few years ago. And then I want to say like 2 years ago, I added these daylilies here, and I'm very happy with them. But with that said, maybe next year I'll take out every other one just to give it some space. It's a constant change that we're making in our gardens, but I think that's what makes gardening fun. As I was digging up the spring bulbs in this area here, I noticed that the soil is very, very sandy. So whatever I plant there, I'm definitely going to have to amend the soil. In about 2018, when my mother-in-law passed away, I planted a climbing rose from her yard in that area over there. And it really limped along every year. And this year it finally was dug out. It looked so horrible. And I wondered why it didn't do so well. I'm guessing that's probably what it was. It was just very, very sandy there. So I definitely will be amending that soil, no matter what I plant in that area. So what I'm doing right now is just digging out these 3 clumps of Spirea. Next, we're going to dig out the Leopard's Bane. We have what I would call the bones of this flower bed in place, the structure, the main structural elements. We have the daylilies, and then we have the boxwood. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to divide the Leopard's Bane, and I'm going to see how many pieces I can get out of it. I obviously don't want to divide it too small, but I also know it will grow very fast. My plan is I want to plant them basically behind the daylilies where they already were, but in between each of the daylilies all the way around in this area. Leopard's Bane blooms in the spring, so normally you'd want to be dividing this probably in the fall, but I'm working on this bed right now. I want to get it done, and I do have irrigation in this bed, so I know that it's going to get good water. I'll also make sure I hand water it, and we also have plenty of rain coming, so it should be fine. To divide it, it's not one of those perennials that's easy to divide by hand or pull apart, especially because it's a fairly big clump. So I'm actually just going to divide it right down the center to start with. You can use a knife. I'm using this type of tool, which is great. It's like a little small handsaw. So far I've gotten 2 pieces out of this. That's as small as I want to divide them. And the next thing I can do is just kind of clean it up a little bit. This is where it bloomed in the spring. So just snip those out. I'm going to go ahead and divide the rest of these leopard's bane, clean them up, and I'll show you how many pieces I end up with. So remember, we started with 4 pieces. You know, to get 14 pieces of the leopard's bane, I would say is not too shabby. And I know that some people like big, huge perennials, but I want to show you that you can take a big, huge perennial, you can divide it down, and literally within 1 to 2 years, each of those pieces will be big, huge perennials again. It's going to look beautiful next spring. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel because I want to show you how pretty this is going to look as it fills in over time. All right, let's get planting. Some people like to just go out and buy the same type of perennial in mass. That can get very pricey. And I like to be a little more patient, buy maybe 1 or 2 of a particular plant, let it grow over time, divide it every few years. There will get to be a point where I really don't need that much of a particular perennial all over my yard, like this leopard's bane. I don't want it everywhere in my yard. I like it in this area. I like it in this area because in the spring, I don't have any other yellow that's blooming. I have daffodils all around my yard. I purposely do not plant daffodils in this bed because I want the leopard's bane to shine. They bloom at approximately the same time. And it is healthier and better for the plant to divide it every 3-4 years, depending on the plant. Some plants need to be divided more often than others. What I'm going to do is finish up, plant all of these. What I'm doing is I'm planting them. I'm starting on the outside of this daylily and I'm planting them in between each of the daylilies. I have enough divisions to be able to do that. So let me finish planting them. I definitely need Mr. Budget Gardener to help me move this bird bath, but we're going to work around it. So for right now, you can see that I planted all the leopard's bane and they're dotted right there. I think they're going to look really pretty next spring. Next, what I want to do is I want to take the Spirea. I'm going to divide them and I'm going to put them basically in between each of the leopard's banes that we have. And I think I'm going to place them between both of them, but set back a little bit from each section. So I'm going to show you how to divide a Spirea, and we're going to cut it. We're going to cut them small, and they will get bigger over time. But no matter what, they're going to be better off than where they were. They were not happy in the position where they were before. This Spirea can actually be divided by hand. And I have to tell you, I actually had a lot of luck dividing the leopard's bane by hand as I got working with it. So you can do it with a handsaw if you want to and cut through like this. And that's a piece right there. Or you can just divide a piece off like this. All right, I have a lot of work to do here. I'm going to divide away and I'm going to plant these. I'll give you a preview of what it looks like when I'm all done. If I learned one thing about this bed, it's definitely very sandy. So this fall, I'm going to have to amend it with some compost for sure. Nevertheless, I put a Spirea here. I have one here. And then I basically place them right over here. As well as tucked in, we have a few like over here. Time will tell how these Spirea do. Maybe, for example, the ones over here might do really well because they get some more sun and perhaps some in the other places might not do well. But we have to give it a try. I'm going to be better about giving them fertilizer in the spring and give them a chance. So the next thing to do is to plant some perennials. I want to mention that I know I planted some plants here, probably too close to where my septic tank is, but I'm pretty positive we know where the access points are to septic tank. I'm almost positive there's one over here, and then there's a filter, and the filter might be where the other bird bath is, over there. I'm guessing that's why we placed the bird baths there. So, I can always put a pot with annuals in there if I do choose to move the bird baths, and then I know where the access points are. But I think for years, that's what's been my holdup with planting this area, is knowing that the septic tank is there. But I know that if I have to, I can always remove plants if there was a problem with the septic tank and it had to be removed. But I don't want it to hold me up with not planting in this area. And when you think about it, there is a lot of real estate over here. And I want to be able to utilize that real estate. There's also a lot of real estate between the boxwoods and coming out this way a little bit. I feel like the maintenance part of this project is done. We have the bones, the structure in place, and now it is time to start planting some other plants in here. Let's go shopping in my yard. I'm going to take you with me, and let's start getting some plants together, and then we can figure out where they're going to go. We're in my holding bed area, which is over here, and then over here is the plant nursery where I sell a bunch of my perennials. We're just going to go pick out some plants for our new space. The first thing I'm grabbing is an Annabelle Hydrangea. I dug up a bunch of these at my mother-in-law's house. I have some in my yard. My sister-in-law, Jen, has some at her house, and she divided some recently, gave me this one. So we're going to plant this one. Over here, I have a bunch of Speedwell, and I bought them marked down on clearance probably 1, if not 2 years ago from one of the big box stores. And when I bought it at that time, I put it over on the other side of my house in a space that we recently reclaimed. I dug them up from that spot that we recently reclaimed and weeded, and I potted them up. This was earlier this year, and here they are. And what I like is that I did divide them. I did put them in pots, and it makes it easier for me to now place them in this spot that we're going to work on. The next plant that I want to grab from here is a Verbascum. I winter sowed it, not this past winter, but the previous winter, and it already pretty much bloomed. It's near the end of its bloom cycle. I want to collect the seeds from it for sure, though. So we're going to go ahead and grab that. The next thing I'm going to grab is a lupine. It's already gone by. It was a purple color. I also winter sowed that, not this past winter, but the previous winter. It looked really pretty when it bloomed. It's purple. Let me go ahead and grab that. Down over here are a bunch of daisies that are white. They bloom in the fall time. I'm going to grab a bunch of those, and I really don't have much experience with this type of perennial. I'm looking forward to seeing them bloom, but I believe next year I probably need to cut them back mid-season because they seem a little bit tall and leggy. We'll see how they do. Let's grab them. My wheelbarrow is full, so let's go bring these plants over. Let's start placing them, and then we'll come shopping for more in my nursery. Shopping for plants in your own yard is like the best feeling, either dividing plants, rehoming plants, whatever it takes. So we're going to start with the hydrangea, and I'm going to try it here. I know I have not had luck with that rose. I'm hoping that the hydrangea fares better. And I know that this hydrangea will get huge. So I honestly am not going to plant it too far back. I want it to have enough room to get big and do its thing. So I'm going to place it right there. When it comes to placing the plants, I'm thinking about color, I'm thinking about season, I'm mostly thinking about height because I definitely need to keep that into consideration. And I know that the lupin gets pretty tall. I do have lupin in other areas of my yard that are not in the best place. So wherever I place this, I want to have some more lupin in this bed and try to make a nice pattern with it. So I am thinking I'm going to put it right here with keeping in mind that I may be changing the placement of it. Looks like it wants to flop. So for right now, I'm going to lay it down. This Verbascum is so beautiful. It really is pretty. And so I can also see that it's quite tall. It is going to be so happy to get out of this tiny 3-inch pot. The Speedwell doesn't get very tall. What I'm thinking of doing is actually placing it in between each of the Spirea. Next, we have the Montauk Daisy. I'm thinking, for right now anyway, I'm going to place one here, and then the third one over there. At this point, it's good for me to step back and survey what we have so far. I wish those plants right there were standing. It'd make it a little easier to see what's going on. But I'm just going to imagine they're standing and they're placed here. And if I do keep the lupin there, I definitely want to have another lupin on the other side over there. So let me stand back, take a look, and see what I think of this pattern so far. I think it looks good. And you know, again, with gardening, worst case, you change it up next year. But we don't know unless we try. So I'm going to go ahead and start planting these. And then after we have them placed, we'll see what else we can do in this space. So let's start by planting the Speedwell. I don't have this plant anywhere else in my yard, so it'll be good to see how it does here. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I don't have a ton of sun in my yard. There are small pockets here and there, and this is one of them. So I definitely want to take advantage of the space and pack it with as many full sun plants as I can get in this area. I'm always envious when I go to someone else's house and they have full sun. But in return, oftentimes they'll tell me they're envious because they don't have a lot of shade. So we just have to make do with what we have sometimes when it comes to gardening and appreciate the landscape that we live in. And I got thinking about those Montauk daisies. They are quite tall. I don't think they will look very good in the place that I have them placed. So they're not planted yet, so it's not too late. I'm going to change up where I think I want to put them in this bed. But I'll show you after I'm done planting the Speedwell. And as I'm planting it, like always, I'm looking to make sure that there are no weeds in here in the pots. I'm pulling the weeds out. If there are any leaves that don't look good on the plant, now's a good time to remove those as well. I think with this bed, the way I had it in the past many years ago, was it just was a little wild. And I feel like for the front walkway, for the main entrance of my house, I didn't want it to look too wild. So I dug everything out of here and left it pretty bare. And I don't like that look either. So I'm trying to go back to planting it with lots of plants, but I'm trying to have a little bit of structure and also thinking about height. I think that was my biggest problem. I didn't think about height. And I'm trying to keep things that don't get too tall towards the front, and the things that are taller, put those towards the back. And we'll see how that ends up looking over time in this bed. I will finish up planting the Speedwell, and then we'll go over which next plant we're going to put in the ground. I just want to take a moment to look at the progress we've made so far. I think this is going to look so beautiful. And finally, I will have a bed in the front of my yard in this bed that we call the bay window garden, where there's some cohesion. There are plants that repeat themselves, that bloom at different times of the year. And I'm very, very happy about this. And we're going to look from this angle. All right, I think it's time to plant the hydrangea. What do you think? When I was digging out the spring bulbs in this area, I realized that I did not get all of them. I did the best that I could, but I know that there are still some in here. And even as I'm going to be digging now, I may run into a few of them, but come spring, I'm sure we will find more spring bulbs pop up, which is fine. At that time, I can then move them out of their spot into a different spot in the garden. So this bed does have drip irrigation in it, which is super nice, especially because Annabelle hydrangeas need a lot of water. If you don't give them water, they will let you know. Before I plant it, I'm just going to pull out some weeds that are in here. Surprisingly, I dug it at the correct depth, which is always nice. So I'm going to go ahead and backfill. There's some good dirt, there's some sandy dirt, and then there's some sand. So we're going to mix it all together. Beautiful. When it comes to the Montauk daisy, I was originally going to place them over here. And I don't know, I want to be able to look straight out and not have something very tall right there. So what I decided to do was I placed the 3 Montauk daisies over here. And we'll see. It's a waiting game. We'll wait and see how they do and how they look over there. But my gut feeling is they will do better over there. They will look better. So we're going to go ahead and just get those planted next. I'm very happy with where we planted the Montauk daisy, and I'm super excited about having this perennial in my garden. I hope this fall it puts on a great show, but it might be in some shock because we just planted it today, and we'll have to wait and see what it looks like come fall time. But here in New England, we tend to buy a lot of mums, we buy a lot of asters, and those are really beautiful. I have those in my garden, the perennial varieties, but I also want some white, and white mums are pretty, white asters are pretty, but why not white daisies? I really hope more than anything in this video, I hope that you get excited about this perennial as much as I am. And from what I've researched, it seems to be a fairly easy perennial to propagate from cuttings. So I want to give that a try as well. Okay, we have a few more plants that we picked out that I want to get planted. So let's work on those next. I am thinking height. I think height would look really nice in here. Again, keep in mind this hydrangea, I imagine, is going to fill in this space right here. So I want to give it the room that it needs. And I'm thinking of putting these perennials that we've pulled out, which would be the Verbascum. And we also have a kind of sad looking lupine. It's just going by. It's near the end of its life. It's going to seed, which we're going to collect when they're ready to be collected. So let's go ahead and get these planted, and then we're going to go to a different part of my garden and dig out some more lupine that have not bloomed yet. So they will be perfect out here, and maybe next year they'll bloom. So now that these have been planted, what I'm thinking is I'm going to plant probably some more lupine around this verbascum. Maybe one over here, one on this side here, with the intention that these lupine will bloom and look really pretty around the verbascum while this is most likely budded up. And then when these are just starting to fade and go by, then this will put on a great show. So that's what I'm thinking will happen. So let's go ahead to another part of my garden and dig out those lupine. We're on the east side of my house, and here are the little lupines I was talking about. I winter sowed these a few years ago. They have yet to bloom. So this was just a temporary place that I put them. This was never intended to be their forever home. Okay, we'll see how we do. I know lupine don't love to be dug out and have their roots disturbed, but we're going to give it a try. We have 1, 2, and I could probably divide this, but I really only need 3. So I'm going to plant, we already have one over here. I'm just going to plant one over here, one on the other side, one over here. I just want them around it. So let's go ahead and get them planted. You know, I probably could cut back some of the leaves on the lupins because they do look so sad. But for right now, for this project, I'm going to leave them the way they are. And I think we are doing pretty good with filling up this bed. So Mr. Budget Gardener helped me, and we moved one of the bird baths over here at this end. And I've started to place a couple of dahlias. So I have one over here, I have one over here, and I have a third one. So we're going to be planting all of these together. And I also went ahead and put a couple of pots in the center of the bed in the area where the septic tank is. And they're pots that we made together in previous videos. So there's one here and there's one there. Both pots were not on irrigation, and in this bed I can at least get them hooked up to irrigation. So they will be much happier being in this bed. And so I'm planning on planting a bunch more dahlias in the open spaces just to fill them up. This dahlia definitely needs to get in the ground as well as all my others. It's a little bit on the yellowish side and it needs some fertilizer. So I'll make sure to fertilize everything afterwards. And I'll be using just a liquid fertilizer. I do have irrigation in this bed, so I'm just checking to make sure that I'm not going to hit the irrigation line. I'm going to loosen up the roots just a little bit. Okay, all done. I'm going to go ahead and plant the rest of the dahlias. Well, to say that we packed this bed is an understatement. I got looking at those old pictures from years ago, and honestly, some of the pictures looked really nice. I don't know if you do this, but I am constantly changing my beds around. And having it so empty was a little sad. I think we planted a total of 60 plants in here. And that included all the plants that we divided that were already in here. That includes all the dahlias. The dahlias alone, I think I planted about 15. I ended up planting more back here, more over there. So yes, this bed is packed. There is really no more room for anything else. I hope you enjoyed this video, and definitely keep following along so you can watch for updates on how all these plants are doing. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.